everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 71 of Into the Necrosphere. Making their long overdue first appearance on the podcast today are Kris and Nathan Glover of Graveir. Out of Brisbane, Australia, they put out a record last year called King of the Silent World, which I very strongly recommend you check out if you have not done so already. We spoke about the record, we spoke about martial arts, about the scene in Australia, and about a host of other things over the course of an hour-plus conversation, which I am sure you guys are going to enjoy thoroughly. Before we get to that, however, I haven't done a Demo of the Week segment for a little while, so I figured it was high time that I do so. And as luck would have it, a long time Into the Necrosphere supporter Raz Casket reached out to me to let me know that his new one-man project, Defod, has just released an EP onto Bandcamp called Kerig Hinnafol. Defod is atmospheric black metal, which I'm pretty sure if you like the show, or if you like most of what I play on the show, you are going to love. It is inspired by the landscapes and the imagery of northern Wales. I think it is absolutely fantastic. I do apologize in advance to any Welsh listeners if I am butchering any of the names and titles here. But I'm going to play one of my favorite tracks off the EP. This is a song called Hineb. That was a track called Heneb by Defod off of an EP called Kirig Heinefol. It is available right now on Bandcamp, and I'll post the link to it in the description of the podcast. If you like what you hear, head over there, buy yourself some cool music, and let Raz know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Also, if you are in an unsigned band and you want to impress me with your finest work, then send me an email to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. You can also reach out to me on the socials. On Twitter, I'm at iNecrosphere. At Instagram, I'm at Into the Necrosphere. Same for Facebook. And if I like what I hear, then you will join the ranks of Master's Call, War Cult, Teuruki, and many others who have basked in the glow of a moment in the Into the Necrosphere Demo of the Week spotlight. And if I really like what I hear, I might even invite you to be a guest on the show, as I've done with Master's Call. And actually, speaking of which, if you like that episode, I exchanged messages with John recently. I should hopefully have him on again at some point in the not-too-distant future. I know that that the guys are working on some new music, of which I've heard a snippet. And if we're lucky, John might share it with all of you scraggly folk that listen to the podcast as well. So I had a great time catching up with him last time as well, so it'll be good to have him back on. I mean, Master's Call, to me, is just another one of those classic examples of record label A&R screwing themselves by ignoring them. So anyway, a couple of other announcements. If you're new to the podcast, I do post new episodes every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and pretty much every other podcast hosting platform for free. And the only thing that I ask in return is that if you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button, share, comment, basically do anything that you possibly can to publicly signal your love and support for Into the Necrosphere, short of getting the logo tattooed on your back, although if you are thinking of doing that, then I will not stop you. Also, if you want to check out some Into the Necrosphere merchandise, head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store. I will again post the link to that in the description of the podcast. There's hoodies, t-shirts, and all sorts of other cool stuff on there. And if you do buy yourself anything, then tag me on the socials, and I will share it. And you'll also get my love and my support and my eternal gratitude. Right, I think outside of that, just a few other things. If you stick around after my conversation with the Graveir boys, you will hear reviews of the latest Fuath album. Fuath, I believe, is the pronunciation of it. Again, this is a continuing trend on today's episode. Is going to be the butchering of the Gaelic, Scottish, Welsh languages. But anyway, Fuath is Andy Marshall of Sayor's side project. They've just put out their second record, and very, very cool, well worth you checking out, and I'll tell you why straight after my interview. I'm also going to be talking about the new or newish Anarkhon record. Anarkhon put out an album at the back end of last year. It's been re-released by Deborah Morty, who they've just signed with. So I'll tell you all about that. And then I will also do some news, during which I will reminisce about the greatness that is Gothic by Paradise Lost. Anyone who has listened to this podcast for any meaningful period of time knows how strongly I feel about that record. I just turned 30 this past Friday, so I thought it was time for me to talk about that and to tell you guys exactly why I love it so much. So brace yourselves. On the topic of bracing yourselves, you're about to listen to 90 minutes of pure badassery. Please welcome to the show for the first time ever, my friends Kris Wolf and Nathan Glover of Graveir. So we were just talking offline about the jiu-jitsu and the catch wrestling. That's probably as good a place as any to jump in. I saw, because obviously we're friends on Facebook. I saw you competed not too long ago in a jiu-jitsu tournament. Came second or third.
Yeah, so I think it was late last year when I guess the when we were in lockdown, we weren't able to do that. But once things opened up, I guess the tournaments did start back up. So I did sign up. My second one, and yeah, came second. So 3 wins and 1 loss. And then the one before that, I got gold, but different weight division. So yeah, pretty happy overall.
And so you said you do training 5 to 6 times a week.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess I do some privates for strictly catch wrestling.
Hmm.
But yeah, sort of during the week, I do a bit of a mix of jujitsu and catch wrestling. So yeah, look, keeps me busy and keeps me out of trouble, really.
How long have you been doing it for?
I think it was 2016 I started. And then before that was doing, Kris and myself were doing a bit of Krav Maga. So probably about 18 months of that. And then decided we like throwing people around a lot more and never sort of looked back.
Yeah, yeah. What's your take on Krav Maga? Because it gets probably like if you go to like McDojo or any of those Instagram pages, it gets probably as much love as it gets hate. And I've always kind of looked at it and thought, it seems very functional. It's definitely not some fucking weirdo pressure point. Using your chi energy to flip the guy over. But I know there's a lot of guys, particularly in MMA circles, that kind of seem to thumb their nose at it.
Yeah, look, that's an interesting one. I think it's really what you decide to use it for and what you're hoping to get out of it. And anything is only as good as the instructors that you get and their backgrounds as well. So I think, look, if you want it for self defense and to deal with a situation against someone who's not particularly trained, I think that would give you some perfectly fine tools around situational awareness and doing stuff. Um, if you've got teachers that do have a background in, jiu-jitsu or MMA or something where they can take that and apply that to what they're teaching you, I think it would be perfectly functional. But um, if they don't, I think you're getting a lot of probably entry level techniques across a range of things that anyone that's mildly trained is perhaps going to dispatch with easily, and I suspect that's probably a part of the
Fuck
reason
you
why.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, what you learn on the ground is going to be nothing compared to someone who has a background in judo or wrestling. What you're going to learn
Yeah.
striking is not going to compare to someone who's got a background in Muay Thai or something. So I think it's just you learn a little bit of everything, but not enough of anything once you get to once you sort of get beyond that defense level. Now obviously if you're using it in a sort of military sense and you have people who have that background and training, then it might be a different story. But I think by and large, that's where that split comes from.
Yeah, yeah. My issue generally with self defense is, and this is going to sound probably quite nerdy saying it, but generally my problem with it is whenever you see like a demonstration video, maybe less so with Krav Maga, but certainly a lot of kind of just self defense training, it always seems to involve a sequence of moves that then stops right at the point that things are going to get really out of hand. When you have the person in the arm lock or you're holding them on their pressure point or whatever the case may be, okay, then normally the instruction stops, but it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? If you have somebody who's on PCP or somebody who's genuinely has intent to harm you, they're not just going to go, oh, you got me, I'm going to tap out now. Yeah, like I said, I always feel in some ways that's kind of dangerous teaching people that shit because whether or not they will go into a situation thinking that they can defend themselves, maybe it creates like a sense of overconfidence in a situation. And I think it might have been Hickson Gracie actually that said this. He was like, if you think you can take on one, two, three, four, multiple people with armed with knives because you learned some fucking fancy self-defense shit, tell your friend to take a magic marker and attack you and see how long it takes you to disarm him with your fancy ass moves. And then afterwards, look down and see how many marks you have on yourself, because that's how many times you would have been cut or stabbed.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with that, and I think the problem with a lot of the, I guess, self-defense as it's taught, you can't really go take a one-day course and just magically know how to defend yourself.
Yeah.
You do need to train that stuff. You do need to train in as real scenarios as you can get, and I think that's the advantage of something like grappling, where you can basically train it 100% or near enough to where things can get messy and you don't have to rely on a sequence of moves. Some of that's down to training too. I know, for instance, my coach is very much around, I can teach you techniques, but I'd rather teach you what your goals are, because that way it doesn't really matter what scenario you find yourself in, you can adapt to it. Because if you know you need to do X, Y, Z, the parameters can change, and you just stay focused on what you need to do. So I find that's helpful, because you're used to dealing with the uncertainty. And not that there's no place for things like katas and that you'd find in taekwondo or karate or anything like that they can help you with form. But if you're not getting live sparring practice in, or the ability to go, near enough to 100%, what you're not learning is the chaos and to deal with that chaos.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right on that. And also, there's something to be said for being battle ready. I remember when I was doing Muay Thai. If I went on holiday for 3 weeks, those first couple of sparring sessions back were fucking murder, and that's 3 weeks away. I feel like if you're not in that chaos on a very, very regular basis, your brain is we're not naturally created to be in those sorts of combat scenarios, or to for our fight or flight response to be a constantly going thing. So I feel like if you're not doing that constantly, then you're not really going to be battle ready, and most people just become overwhelmed, I think, with the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I think it's just that sense of panic too. If you're not used to, I guess the thing about being able to train at near 100% is that it helps you to sort of moderate that fight or flight response or fear. And I think people overlook how difficult that can make it for you in one of those scenarios. You train with someone that hasn't trained before, and they overexert themselves. They have an adrenaline dump, and then they're pretty much, you could kill them after 30 seconds, if that.
Sorry about the tardiness, gentlemen.
Don't worry, mate.
No worries.
But yeah, I mean, and you can see with that adrenaline dump, they literally start shivering, and I mean, it is something. I mean, all of us have experienced it at some point in our lives. When you were at school and the bully picked on you or whatever, it completely overwhelms you. You start shaking, and as you say, within 30 seconds, you literally feel dead on your feet.
Yeah, and just the ability to think clear and make decisions and calculations in the middle of it is something that people really underestimate. They go, well, if this happened, I'd just do this. And I'd just go, well, would you?
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
Not. Yeah. What probably happened is you'd panic and then do something really dumb, which would probably end up with you having, something bad happen to you. So,
and that's the thing, when it comes to knives, as an example, it's split-second mistake that gets you a knife in the kidney, or a knife in the spleen, or whatever the case may be. My question to you is, have you felt like switching over to catch wrestling and jiu-jitsu has helped you with your nighttime vigilantism, or?
No, it's just made it more of a menace.
You do jiu-jitsu as well, right?
Yeah, man. I unfortunately got Nathan into it as well, and that was the worst mistake of my life.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you guys didn't meet at jiu-jitsu class and then decided it's time to start a black metal band as well.
No, we met years ago through like a failed doom metal project through some similar friends, and just never really went anywhere. And Nathan moved up from New South Wales to Queensland, which is about 1,000 kilometers, start a new life. And he reached out and met up at a show. And kicked off from there, and just similar bands, similar interests, similar vibes. And he had a stockpile of 4 million riffs, and I had a lot of energy and a drum kit, so life was good, right?
That's so perfect. Yeah. Just one question on the martial arts still. Like, either of you guys do any striking stuff, or have either of you guys thought to make the pivot into MMA?
I used to do kickboxing until I had some eye operations.
What sort of operations?
I had a recto-orbital abscess behind my right eye, and they had to drill in here, and basically they drilled real close to the casing my brain and said I can't do striking anymore. That's why I just do jiu-jitsu.
Holy shit!
Yeah, bro.
What? So like, can you? Yeah. I was about to say, you should start a death metal band and have that as the cover of the first album.
Yeah.
What? So how did that?
Old school carcass shit.
Jesus Christ! I mean, so tell me, how did that start? How did you kind of realize something was amiss?
Just woke up. No.
And how did it feel?
Shit! It kind of felt like I had a sty behind my eye. Like my whole eye was sealed shut. The doctor told me that my eyeball was protruding 4 millimeters. The abscess was just pushing it forward. And from 20 minutes from being at a doctor for a pigsty in my eye, I was signing papers to go into surgery.
Holy shit. Well,
Yeah, bro.
you can thank your lucky stars you don't live in the UK, mate. There would have been 20 months until surgery. They would have been like, look, when the eye is completely rotted out, I think then maybe it's time for us to step in and do something in an emergency. I know a dude who, and this is a tragic story, but I know a guy who went and saw a GP 3 times in succession, claiming that he had this ongoing cough, he was having difficulty breathing, and he said he could feel like a pressing against his lungs. And the doctor said, "Oh, it's seasonal flu or seasonal cold. You'll walk it off." The 4th time that he went, the doctor was like, "Oh no, it's actually advanced lung cancer, and you've got about 3 more weeks to live." And he literally passed away in 2 weeks from then.
Fucking
So
hell,
just
man.
as a side note, anybody that thinks that socialized medicine is a good idea, wait until you live with it for a while. But
No, we're very lucky here, man. Like, I couldn't fault my treatment. Like, I was in hospital for like 3.5 weeks, and they looked after me real good. It was and I had like 2 follow-up procedures, and basically like, what do you do for fun? It was like, oh, I get punched in the face. They're like, yeah, you can't do that anymore. It's not a good idea. And I was like, sweet. And then that's about the time Nathan and I started doing jiu-jitsu. So
yeah. Do you has that affected your vision at all?
it actually improved my vision. I went in with reading glasses and I came out with 20/20.
Oh shit! It's like
so
it's like Terminator now. You can start, you could start seeing people's identity on the street.
No, it was pretty wild because it's obviously pretty daunting because I had like the mad pirate patch going on, and after the surgery they've taken it off, and you're in your nightgown with no underwear on, and they're like, all right, so do reading tests, and I was kind of freaking out because it's blurry. I've had this patch over my eye for like 24 hours, and nailed it. The dude's like, oh, you've got 20/20 vision. I was like, sweet. Well, I didn't come in with it, so that's a bonus.
Yeah,
they gave me a 65% chance of losing complete vision.
Jesus Christ! Now that must have been terrifying, though.
Oh man, the worst thing about that whole thing was I was in emergency ENT, so ear, nose, and throat, and the gentleman beside me had like this rare condition where he perpetually had water in his lungs. So like to the barman, 15 minutes, this guy would come in with a vacuum sucking this dude's lungs out, which I can't just like. I listen to some pretty horrific, like noisy death metal, black metal. This was like the most, intense noise I've ever heard in my life, and will be perpetually like ingrained into my forehead. And so
I know the exact sound because my grandmother passed away of lung cancer, and for 6 months that happened every half hour. It sounds.
And like this guy was like an arm's reach away from me, and I'm laying there like completely smacked out on any painkillers I could get, and just like, this dude's lungs is killing me. And luckily Nathan came the next day with noise cancelling headphones and like saved you.
And an iPod full of extreme metal, so he was pretty sorted.
Oh man, that was the best 2 weeks of my life. It was Oxycontin and just death metal. It was the best.
Do they still give people Oxycontin in Australia?
Yeah, bro.
Jesus. I think as far as I know, it's banned. I know it's banned in the States as well because people have such a difficult time when they come off of it. They start getting withdrawal symptoms and the shivers and all sorts of shit.
Do you have endone over there?
No, I think I'm trying to think what the heaviest stuff is that they
opiates.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. Cocodamol, I think, is probably the heaviest stuff that they've prescribed. Yeah, I had a nerve in my mouth that got infected about 6-7 years ago, and I literally finished almost an entire box of Cocodamol in one day. Went to this emergency 24-hour dentist, and the dentist is like, "Have you taken painkillers?" I said, "I finished a box of Cocodamol."
They're all here.
It's doing fuck all. It's not touching the pain is still there. And she was like, well, listen, I think 1, you probably need to go and get your stomach pumped. And 2, we need to fix this up straight away. But yeah, that was the most fucked up thing that's ever happened to me.
They gave me like pretty much a 6-month script of this stuff, man. And it's hectic. I only used it for like probably maybe 2 weeks I was in the hospital. and like
Yeah.
afterwards I didn't have any like reoccurring pains, so I just used them to help me complete my tattoo bodysuit.
I thought you were going to say you sold them and that financed the new drum kit.
Nah, bro. Self gain only.
So you have a bodysuit tattoo?
Pretty close.
Yeah. So
I'm up to the real awkward spots, like my armpit and my butt cheeks.
yeah.
It's just the worst.
I when Leo did the inside of my arms, motherfucker, I was
like up in there.
if this sucks that badly, like armpit, ribs,
Well,
that sort of
our
thing.
bass player is a tattooist, and she's done a lot of work on all of us. She conned me into doing 2 days simultaneously, 12-hour sittings at a convention, a tattoo convention, and holy shit, man! Like that was. I just summoned some like goat lord strength with that one. Fucking, it was the next, like, had like a blindfold over me so I didn't have to look at anyone, had headphones on, and she's smashing away. Like it's a pretty, not even a small piece either. Like it's my whole entire rib cage. And
that's very cool though, man. Oh, and I like the pentagram as well.
Yeah. And yeah, basically she's like, just sit there and you'll be fine. Just cop it. And it was the worst 2 days of my life. Like I felt like Batman. I couldn't move at all.
Yeah, but the thing is with the recovery as well, like the itching and stuff when you get to like day 2, day 3, that drives me fucking crazy. Like, I
the
kept,
worst thing was
because you don't want to
like,
scratch it, so you kind of want to tap your arm all the time, but then you end up looking like a fucking heroin addict when you're doing it.
But seriously, you put your finger on your rib cage and just move your shoulders, move your back, stand up, sit down. You don't understand how much you move your entire torso. And that was the most excruciating part. Not even like having the first day's work done and then the second day going over it again. Don't recommend it, friend.
Yeah. Well, you also did it for the thrill and amazement of everybody that came to the convention.
Yeah. Oh man. So
do you do are you a company man like Nathan?
Corporate guy, yeah. I actually just took my suit off.
What do you do for a living?
I do industrial sales with like in the building industry.
Yeah. I do often, like when I talk to people, like Mike from Tombs as an example is I think he's an industrial engineer. I do the most corporate work, and it's always so funny when everybody, anybody at work that starts following me on social media, as soon as they see something about the podcast or whatever, they're like, I would never have figured you as one of them. Yeah. do the people at work know that that you guys are in a black metal band?
Yeah, 100%. I'm not really shy about who I am. It's just, if anything, it's just a cement of don't fuck with me and I'll get shit done.
Yeah.
I think long ago it was just made a decision that you need to be who you are and you'll succeed or fail on those merits. So yeah, I've always been real open with it.
Yeah, that's I totally agree. Best advice I ever got was one of my old bosses, and he was, as I was leaving the company that I'd worked at for 5 years, he sat me down one day and he said, like, before you go, I want to tell you something. I was like, I have seen you try to turn the volume down on your personality for the last 5 years more often than you've kind of shown the kind of person you really are. He said, don't ever do that. Always have the volume cranked completely up. You're not some weirdo. You're not some fucking psychopath. Generally speaking, people are going to remember you. Exactly. People are going to remember you for the things that are that were different or slightly quirky, because none of it is massively offensive. It's taste in music or taste in sports or taste in film. So I took that advice to heart, and it's definitely been I'd say probably it's helped me more than anything else. People kind of, they laugh at it and they think it's a bit weird, but at the same time, I'm also the vast majority of their boss, so they can fuck right off.
My favorite thing is when the coworker shows interest in what you do. Like, yeah, man, I'll come to one of your shows. It'll be fun. And, they come in their popped collared shirt and smelling like Louis Vuitton into like a sea of sweat and battle jackets. It's fucking hilarious. And they get like, everyone that I've invited has always been captivated by it because it's such a culture shock to them, because it's like, I didn't know this whole system of living existed. It's it's cool, especially when you like send them into a room with 1,000 people. They're kind of like, oh, I didn't know your band was that big. It's like, oh, it is what it is.
I was going to ask you, so two questions. Question one, I've got a buddy who's just about to move to Australia, and he shows me constantly photos of the houses he's looking to buy, or, you know, like where he's going to go and live and stuff like that. I obviously know a fair few folks in Australia, and I obsessively watch MasterChef Australia. At least I did until the prior presenters left. From my perspective, you've got great weather, disproportionate number of attractive women, and generally speaking, people don't come across like complete arseholes. Why is the Australian metal scene thriving the way that it is? Like, I feel like people like you and Sam from Werewolves, I don't feel you guys should be as angry as you are.
It doesn't necessarily have to be an angry thing. We're just, I guess, emotional people with a really strong outlet. Yeah. And, you know, everyone's got their own life experience and their own ideas and their own way of living. And I guess putting it back to what you were saying before about the healthcare system in the UK, you know, we've got it pretty good here. You know, there's a lot of creative avenues. There's a lot of, you know, you can live off your art. You can live off your music if you needed to.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm asking that facetiously, but it's insane to me. Like the Australian metal scene's always been pretty interesting to me anyway. And I've spoken to Matt Wilcock and people like that about some of the older bands that I feel were really overlooked, maybe because of the time that they were in. You know, digital music or distribution wasn't as big as it was. Like I've spoken multiple times about Alchemist as an example, and, you know, I think Alchemist could have been like one of the biggest bands on the planet had they not been based out of Australia. Yeah. But like, I mean, now it's not just a case of like the old guard coming up and doing really exciting stuff like you have with Werewolves, but I mean, there's you guys, Spire. I mean, I can probably go down a list of at least 20 just fucking great bands coming out of Australia. Like it seems like you almost sort of have this you know, surge on a par with like Iceland, Poland, or whatever the case may be. What do you think is fueling all of that?
Good question. Actually, I was thinking about this recently, and I was like, what? I think there's a way that you can pick bands that are from Australia, even though they don't necessarily sound anything alike. There's just something that you can pick. And all I can really put it down to is that everyone in this, all the bands are just a little bit cooked. I don't know the best way to put that, but it's like, yes, you've got your standard sound, but it's been left out in the sun a bit too long and it's kind of warped a little bit. So there's just something that's not too straight laced about anything that comes out of Australia. It's a little bit wild and untamed to a certain degree. So, you know, even though something like some of those older sort of black thrash bands that were coming out, you know, before to now, I think that sort of bloodline of irreverence somewhat runs through them.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean about picking out Australian bands. I think I've spoken about it. I might even have spoken about it on the review that I did for your band. But it's like, if there's like a center line, Australian bands just always seem to be just slightly off to one side or the other. There's like
there's always something, a particular type of spit.
Yeah. There's always something just a little bit different, like a little bit twisted, a little bit gnarly about the stuff that you guys bring out. I mean, in the same way,
founded by convicts, mate.
Well, there you go. So the real bloodline
is the rabid bloodlines that makes the good music.
Yeah. But like, you know, like with Poland, you generally speaking nowadays, you also know if it's a Polish band, you know, it's super riff heavy, like a lot of discordance. I mean, all of them. But it seems like they, you know, when they were babies, there were two things that were most important to them in their life: breast milk and Death Spell Omega. So, but it's like, but yeah, with Australian bands, there's just always that slight twist. And at one point, I was thinking to myself, is it because of the the distance between Australia and a lot of other countries, that, you guys had a scene that sort of fed off itself rather than feeding off, what was going on in other countries like Poland, as I said. And I mean, I love the Polish scene, so it's no disrespect to Poland, but it's obvious that they fed off a lot of scenes that were going on around them. France, Scandinavia. Whereas in Australia, you guys have your scene, and that's that. There's nothing else around you really. And I feel like maybe the bands kind of developed organically that way, and that Australian sound was forged because of that.
Yeah, I think to some extent too, it's also not just distance from other countries; it's distance from each other as well. I mean, to get from Brisbane, where we are, to Perth is like 5-6 hour flight, so it's miles away from anywhere. Perth's closer to Bali than it is to anywhere else in Australia, any of the other capitals. So there's a little bit of that isolation, I think, is, or as I like to put it, we got sent away because we didn't, we were convicts, and we never learned proper table manners, really. So there's just something a little bit off in that sense, that we're a little bit, as you say, a bit off center in terms of the sounds that come out. And yeah, even when you're getting it, even when you're listening and stuff from overseas and picking things up, it somehow just kind of gets a bit warped.
Yeah.
The thing I really appreciate about the Australian scene is it's not like per se your Iceland scene or your Polish scene where it's like, yeah, it's weird murky black metal, or it's the very intense blast heavy death metal. Like, Australia's got so many like untapped, underappreciated talents that are world class and unique in their own. It's not so much like a specific direction sonically, it's more just various creative outlets that are just otherworldly, man. Like some of my favorite bands are Australian, and they always will be, because it's like you said, man, it's like nothing else.
Yeah, ditto. And I mean, I've raved on the show about the Amenta as an example, on multiple occasions. Great, perfect example of guys that have been in the scene for a long, long time, suddenly coming out with a record that's the best, in my view, the most challenging thing that they've ever made. Like Sam Bean is 46 years old. He and Matt, kind of, are of my generation. I think Werewolves is some of the best music that those two guys have ever performed in their life, and they're doing it almost as like a fuck you to everybody else. Like, we look how quickly we can outdo you. But that's also, in itself, it's another thing I've spoken about on the podcast. It's so difficult, generally speaking, for people that have been in the scene for a long period of time to stay relevant and to stay interesting. And a lot of folks in the Australian scene seem to make it look effortless.
I think you might have hit on something there. I think Werewolves is actually a perfect explanation of Australian extreme metal. It's a fuck you to everyone else.
Yeah. Which is exactly what it ought to be. I mean, I've moaned about this an awful lot, but all of the woke fucking nonsense that's influencing metal, or you have all this. I mean, metal has always had a social conscience of some sort, but at the same time, I've no interest in somebody preaching to me. I want music to be dangerous and edgy, and I want there needs to be a sense of menace to it. I don't want to be able to, play music to some fucking dickhead down the street, waving their protest flag, and they go, "Yeah, I really get what they're talking about." I need
be careful with opinions like that, mate. You'll get me too.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's what I actually had my first message saying, "So great to see somebody, speaking out the way that the way that you do. I just hope you don't get cancelled." I was like, "Fuck! If someone's going to cancel this podcast, I mean, they really have too much fucking time on their hands."
Man, we get messages all the time from random people, just not even with any sort of description or anything. It's just like, what's your political stance? What's your view? And it's just like, we're not a political band, mate. You're
I was about to say,
climbing up the wrong tree.
My political stance is go fuck yourself. But so if we talk a bit about your stuff, so King of the Silent World has been out for just under a year now. And I feel again, I feel like it's gotten this sort of constant stream of attention. Like, I've brought it up a couple of times on this podcast. I know a fair few other people that have as well. I feel like I'm curious to know how you guys feel about the reaction to the record. Has it surprised you? Did you guys sort of, as you were making it, did you expect that this was going to be something that people would receive as well as they have?
I mean, recording an album it's always about putting your best foot forward. And we're very fortunate this time around to have a really good team around us that believed in what we did as much as we did, which made the promo assault and the release side of it utterly seamless. I mean, we were fortunate enough this time around to work with two labels that were both willing to work together to put this thing out. And I mean, we did the work and we put out the record the way we wanted to and the way we wanted to sound, recorded it where we wanted to record it, did it all on our own timeline, and it came out exactly how I always envisioned it. And it was, like even down to the artwork, like it's probably our most adventurous effort as far as full, we did a piece of artwork for each song, like found an artist that we all believed in that would represent this album the best it could, and having both of those labels just push it as hard as we were created that constant wave of attraction to it, and it just made it really pleasurable to do.
Yeah, and I think look, as far as releases go, this one's definitely had I guess the most response to it, and songwriting wise, I know we've certainly improved our skills, I think, and felt pretty good about the stuff that we pulled together for the album. And from recording, you learn from your mistakes to some degree, and we were just better prepared, more budget, learned what to do and what not to do from previous records. So I think this is the first one where we we're more or less really quite well prepared and comfortable, and I think some of that shows up in the response to it.
There's definitely like a maturing and an evolution from Iconostasis to what's on. Yeah, and I was curious to know, as far as like the things that you learned from Iconostasis that you applied here, what is kind of some of the main things that come to mind?
Iconostasis was definitely more of a group collaborative effort as far as songwriting went. But it was also filled with just energetic recklessness in the sense of we just wanted to do it, and we just wanted to do it now, where with the new one, King of the Silent World, we took our time, we were patient, we made sure that the songs we were going to commit to it were exactly what we wanted on there, where with our first album, it was generally like we were impatient to an extent where we just wanted to get it done, and like all the songs on there are great, and we still like the songs and still play them at rehearsals and stuff, but this was more of like the cohesive piece that we needed for the discography, basically.
Yeah, and I think when you when you first start, as soon as you've got enough songs ready, you rehearse them a couple of times, you want to go get them out as quickly as possible. And it's the same with the album. Once we had enough material to start recording, we kind of rehearsed to the point we felt comfortable with it, and then started recording. Whereas this one, we'd really written songs, rehearsed them out, went back, changed bits, added bits in. We had more songs than what we needed, so we were able to make some decisions, and just add more layers and things to them. So I think there's a bit more texture in the new album, I guess in the latest album as a result.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like things like the atmospherics, all of those sorts of things, it's taken a big step up. The other thing, it's something I comment on regularly on a lot of albums, but I was listening to this record again in the run up to us doing this, and one of the things that I really like about it as well is the fidelity. Everything is like super crisp, clear, but without ever sounding overproduced. It doesn't have that kind of trigger drum sound, but at the same time, it sort of has. It's kind of got an organic sound, but a sound that if you played this on, high-end hi-fi, which I have, it sounds fucking great.
We have we have our good ally Aaron Warboys at Adversary Studios to thank for that. Dude's been a friend of ours for over a decade and just knows us as people, knows us as a band, has done our live sound. You know, he was nice enough to do some keyboard stuff on the most recent album and the first album too, actually. Yeah,
just give me 2 seconds. Let me just see what this fucking hound is barking over. Bailey, what's your story? I've got the most needy pit bull. Yeah, just hold on for 2 seconds. I'll be back now.
No trouble.
What's it?
Going on, Cobber?
Not much. Just sitting down having a chat with two fine gents.
Fine gents.
Just gonna let her out for a little bit. Is that all right? How are you doing?
Setup looks good, bro.
What's that?
I'll come get her in a
The
second.
setup looks good. Flashy.
Yeah, wasn't sure whether it would work or not, so just gave it a.
Man, I just downloaded like 16 different fucking Zoom apps to get this thing working. Losing my shit.
Right, so if you've been running me down while I was away, I'll see all of it, and you know there'll be revenge. Will be revenge. Will be in order.
We had a phone call prior to this about ratting you out, bro. You're all good. We got it out of our system.
Yeah, well, that's another thing I've been fortunate about. I've not really gotten a huge amount of hate mail. I like what you do,
man. You're up front and you're a maniac. It's what people need.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I know I literally just when I started this podcast, the reason I got it started was because I was sitting in. When I was writing, I used to sit in these press junkets or press days, and then you overhear the interviews that everybody would do. And not to run anybody down, but I thought two things. One, I thought as a music fan, I'm not interested in hearing the answer to most of these fucking dumb questions. So but I don't. It's always the most mundane crap. So why do you use the guitar picks that you use? Tell me about your rig.
Yeah.
And then you also think to yourself, like from a band perspective, if I were being interviewed by somebody, would I want to answer the same questions 200 times? Like I had dinner with Scott Ian from Anthrax once, and he'd been a bit of an arse when I spoke to him, but when we had dinner, he actually kind of opened up and he was a lot nicer, and he was saying like I've done 250 interviews in the last week, and the vast majority of them I get about 80% the same questions. Mm. And so then I kind of, I like Joe Rogan and I like podcasts that are sort of more free form and, people just talking and things like that. And then I figured, well, if I take that idea and I bring it to music and I talk to bands that I want to talk to, rather than, interview bands that that are prescribed to me by whoever I'm writing for, or, whatever is coming out from record labels. Why I consciously try to not affiliate myself or work with any record labels. The only exception is Apocalyptic Witchcraft and Deborah Morty, and that's because they're fucking brilliant. But I just kind of do just do my own thing, and whether one person listens to it or 50 or 500, I don't give a shit. I've got a job. I don't need any money. So, I'm not doing this because I want to have a mass following and become super famous. I just do it because I enjoy doing it, and as a kind of a side benefit to it, I've managed to make a lot of really great friendships along the way as well. From very unexpected sources. I people like Mike from Tombs, Kelly from Kelly T Reviews. There's a fair few folks that I've met. Evan, who was on the podcast last week, I've become pretty good friends with him. So that's kind of been a side benefit to it as well. And if I come and visit Australia, then I will assume that we're friends, be showing up at both of your houses and saying, entertain me.
Beers are on us, brother.
That's it.
I'm
always welcome.
Like written and like visual, like platforms, like as far as written zines go, like when I first got into metal, that was the go-to. The internet wasn't that popular. Yeah. And it's the dudes, it's the maniacs that are finding that deep underground seed that's been planted in fucking Peru or Iceland or whatever, that they've dug up and gone, holy shit, this is the best thing since sliced bread. It's those type, like it's that energy and that sort of effort that is appealing. Like, like nowadays I could name probably 5 zines off the top of my head that I would actually go out on my way for, like Bardo Methodology, like that dude does probably the best written format zine like ever.
Yeah.
And there's a guy in Australia, RS Frost, who does it in a missive zine, very similar format. You know, dude does his research. He knows what he likes. He likes good music. So everything that he does is killer. And I mean, even like visual stuff like you do, man. Like you like your music. You know what you're talking about. You ask the right questions. It's those sorts of things that make it appealing. And like you said, you don't want that same, you know, template every fucking interview. You know, where did you record your album? You know,
yeah.
how long have you been a band?
So tell me about the car journey on the way to the first recording session. Right, hold on for 2 seconds again. Let me just let her in.
No trouble.
Being a nuisance today. Come in. There you go. Right, that'll hopefully be the last one, unless she tries to climb on my lap, which is very likely.
All good.
But,
just following on from, I guess, you know, the what Kris was saying, you know, I think there's something to be really valued around good quality writing and not just that, but also the exchange of ideas, which you can get in a long form podcast like what you're doing. That's actually quite important. You know, anyone can pick up a pen or type something on the internet, and I think to some extent because it's so easy, people are sometimes quite the bar can be lowered, and I think sometimes, you know, people can be quite glib and avoid exchanging ideas rather than writing some kind of hot take or just even barely able to structure a sentence. So, you know, I think good quality writing, good quality journalism, good quality interviewing, whether it's positive or negative, should actually be really insightful and enlightening. So I think that's why, you know, the stuff that you're doing or the stuff that people like Bardo Methodology or Intermissive are doing is important and should be respected.
yeah. No, well, I appreciate that. And
anyone that does their research, like that's the most important part. If you're not as interested as I am, I'm going to give you subpar answers.
Yeah.
But if you do research, deep dive, find the things that are actually important, ask the questions that are actually important, you're going to get a descriptive answer, because, you know, we're artists, we're passionate about what we do. If you ask me a boring ass question, you're going to get a shit answer.
Yeah. And that's the thing with doing this podcast is you I'm sure you guys will have spotted it, but I'm one thing I've trained myself to do over the years is I can spot a vein of conversation pretty quickly, and I start drilling down into that, because you can get, if you kind of know what to look out for, you can spot the cues and what the person's saying to you as far as what they're passionate about. And that's really all I'm interested in talking about. I'm not interested in talking about something that bores the other person, because that's not going to make for a good conversation. I'm interested in talking about stuff that they find exciting, and I don't give a fuck what it is. It could be stamp collecting for all I care. But anything that someone's passionate about, generally speaking, in my view, is going to be interesting. You know, and that applies to everything in life. I've often said, you know, when it comes to relationships, you know, I couldn't be my girlfriend is diametrically opposed to me in virtually every facet of life. But the one thing we have in common, we're both extremely passionate about something. With me, it's music. With her, it's horses. But I think the fact that she's passionate about something means that she gets when I get excited about hearing something new, or when I, you know, get excited about an episode of the podcast that I've done, or whatever the case may be. In the same way that I'll get excited, I'll get why she gets excited about something to do with the horses. But to speak to people that lack that, you know, whether it's like wiring in their brain that they just don't have, I find it next to impossible. And unfortunately, with the majority of people in modern day society, they aren't passionate about anything. The only thing they're passionate about is
world, though, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, you ask your corporate friend what music they listen to, and they just tell you, "I don't know, the radio." It's like, cool conversation, bro.
No, what they'll say is, "Oh, a little bit of everything." That's always that's the stock answer. And then they'll say,
"How do you
blah
feel
blah.
about
You know
what?"
Yeah. What's the last movie that you watched? Well, I'll say, I saw The Devil, which is a really cool Korean horror movie. You're weird.
That's a great movie, by the way. I'm actually
oh my
fan of,
god, mate!
Yeah,
fucking brilliant.
Big fan of sort of some of those of Korean cinema. I had a uni lecturer that was kind of really involved in the Korean film film scene and got me onto it. So watching a lot of the Park Chan-wook stuff and Bong Joon-ho and other directors, I got to see some really cool films outside of when they would be released internationally. So it kind of started me on the journey. But that was a fantastic film.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my thing with Korean cinema started when a friend of mine who's a film critic, which is something I used to do when I was in South Africa. He loaned me a copy of Old Boy, and it was the first Korean movie I'd ever seen, and I was so utterly blown away by it that I just literally started trying to get hold of as much Japanese and Korean cinema as I could. And I feel like, especially when it comes to horror or thrillers, I just feel like they've got it sussed. With the exception of Hereditary, there's been nothing that's come out of Hollywood or anywhere else, in my opinion, that holds a candle to the best that I've seen from South Korea for at least the last 2 decades. Memoirs of a Murderer, The Wailing, Train to Busan. If you move to kind of the Japanese side, Audition is fucking phenomenal. I mean, even Parasite was kind of the first, Korean movie that really won proper international acclaim, and deservedly so. I don't know if you've seen it, but it is incredible.
Yeah, I have actually, and agree with you. It was actually a really fantastic movie. And even then, something doesn't on its surface appear to be a horror film as such. Still has some pretty interesting veins of, I think, like creepiness or terror that's built into them. The part there, without spoilers, but obviously, the guy that is sort of sitting in the basement on his own is just a bit of a there's a sense of unease that creeps over that film, even though it's not strictly speaking a horror film.
To tie it all back into where we were before about certain scenes and where they are and what they're about. Like, I find I've been to Japan twice, and it's a very rare culture where it's so formulaic and there's such a level of respect, and like the ideology behind living is to conform and to be a part of it. Like, when I toured over there, a lot of the dudes that I played in bands with were what's called tissue people, where they don't conform, they don't wear suits, they don't want to be a part of anything. Their job is literally on the streets, hand people tissues because of the influenza breakout. Like, that's what they get paid to do, is to hand tissues to people because they refuse to wear a suit and tie and be the corporate life. And that sort of breeds a level of resent and distaste for life, and that would breed a different type of idea of evil, which is why I guess Japanese cinema in particular is so interesting, because it's not, oh, there's a monster under my bed. It's like, no, there's a monster building this empire above me that I have no control over. That's my view of evil. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I also love and deeply respect and enjoy about both Korean and Japanese movies, and if we take Parasite as an example, it's a film that they make movies that can change the atmosphere very eloquently and very elegantly at the drop of a dime. There's a scene in Parasite that I was laughing about more than I've laughed in any fucking Will Ferrell movie, even like stand-up comedians. Like the bit where they fake that the woman might have tuberculosis, and the guy like pulls out, just the look on his face as he pulls the tissue with like the red ink up and like shows it to the woman. I was fucking howling with laughter. And then, as you say, literally with no warning, it then flips to this point where they're in a basement with this guy shackled up, and it's this real sense of unease and horror and just nastiness that's about to occur. Audition, if you talk about Japan, that's the same way. The first half of the movie starts off like a romantic comedy, and then the next thing you know, this woman is sticking acupuncture needles in the guy's eyes.
Yeah, look, I mean, to watch too, like if you sit down and watch it, there'd be some people that would find that movie to be quite slow, but I would say the build up is worth the payoff. It does it turns on that dime, and I think just the visual. I think I find a lot with Japanese and Korean cinema, and look, Asian cinema generally. There's a certain visual element that really I don't think Western films can recreate, and it's really that sort of blend between, I sort of call it stillness and motion, but visually they've also just really got a particular flair about them, and the way that they, the way that they shoot things and the way that they capture a scene that is just really unique, and it can be as beautiful as it is terrifying.
Yeah, there's a beautiful lack of restraint to a lot of what they do. When it comes to violence, as an example, there was a Hong Kong movie called Greenhouse, and there's a moment in the movie where earlier in the film, this guy's eyeballs gotten popped out of his socket with a fucking wooden ingot, and then it rolls over onto the floor, and you see the like later on in the film, the cops storm in, and as they storm in, this guy steps in the eyeball, and it squirts over the room, and I think it hits the woman in the face. And it's so fucking funny, but it is so disgusting. But they have a real kind of, I mean, there's no breaks when it comes to violence. Like they have a very different view of how violence is portrayed and presented. There's another one that I watched that I fucking love. It didn't get the best reviews, but I thought it was amazing. Killers. It's like a Japanese Indonesian hybrid. I can't remember the people that made it, but they've made a couple of other movies since that weren't as good. But basically, it's about this serial killer in Japan and this vigilante who upload videos to some fucking shady dark website about their killings and how they kind of eventually meet. But it is fucking fantastic, absolutely fantastic. No, again, a couple of sequences. One where a guy gets murdered in a nightclub, which is some of the most brutal but just phenomenally well done and well shot stuff that I've ever seen in my life.
Have you seen Irreversible?
Yeah, I have.
Like that fire hydrant scene, man. There's like, in the making of that film, there's like a 35-minute breakdown of how much detail they put into this dude's face getting caved in by a fire hydrant. You got to admire that sort of dedication to a cause, right?
Well, again, France is pretty sharp when it comes to horrors as well. I mean, Martyrs I thought was a great movie.
Martyrs
Inside
is fantastic.
I thought was very, very good.
On Irreversible though, like, you want to talk fucked up minds, the director's wife is the main lady in the film, right? And he decided to make a fucking 25-minute rape scene in an alley with his wife involved in it. Like, that's dedication, right?
Oh yeah, no, very much so. I mean, Irreversible to me, I've never I it's not a movie that I'd rewatch for obvious reasons. I think most people that rewatch it would be like, when it comes to certain stuff like animals, rape, kids and stuff like that, I'm not interested in seeing that really. It's useful. It's good to watch it once, but I think like it's not something where, like Parasite, I can watch 50 times. I'd get something new from it every single time, and it's fucking insane, and the violence at the end of the movie is nuts. But there's still like there's a tongue-in-cheekness to it as well. But I was going to ask you about Japan, because that's one of the places I've most wanted to visit. Like, firstly, did you go there like for work? Was it just for fun? And what is it like?
First time around, strictly pleasure. Second time around was for a tour.
Yeah.
I would live there. There's a level of respect to that sort of culture that is unmatched, and I was in like a wanderlust of culture shock. Just, you walk into any store, and whether you buy something or not, they thank you for walking in, they thank you for walking out. There's such like a presentation towards their idea of eating and their idea of community, and it's just, amen. If you're going to do one thing before you die, go to Japan.
Yeah. That is 100% on the list. I want to coordinate it when they have the Tokyo Hi-Fi show, because I saw a documentary on Tokyo audiophiles and they take it to the fucking next level. One guy had an electric pylon installed outside so that he could get clean electricity coming into his house, so that the sound doesn't get affected. And the funniest thing about it was his actual house is a fucking rat's nest. It looks terrible. And then he's got this like listening area that is just absolutely pristine. If somebody took just a photo of that, you'd think the guy is, some super wealthy dude, but he's just plowed every cent that he has into speakers, amplifiers, and this like one open area in his Tokyo apartment.
But that's what I found about, like, especially touring in Japan, was like there's such a level of dedication towards the idea of professionalism, to the sense where, you know, the venue would look like a crack den from the outside looking in, but you get inside and there's $45,000 worth of lights. There's the most intense iPad controlled sound system you've ever seen. Like, every band is just absolutely flawless, and you know, it's just such a professional ideal. It's fantastic. And I mean, I got really lucky when I was over there and got to meet some dudes that I've been talking to for years and play with their bands and meet people that, you know, I never thought I would. And it was just a good time. Definitely do it, man.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely on the list. And again, I've watched so many documentaries, and what I love as well, to your point, is the sense of kind of retained tradition in the country. Like, you know, the West at the moment is trying to throw out as much tradition as they possibly can, whereas Japan, you know, you'll still find like old guys who are, you know, master swordsmen or master sword crafters, and that's like a secret that they hold very, very dear, that they will only pass on to, you know, one person in their entire lifetime. And as much as, you know, as much as people will look at it and think it's an oddity, I think there's a value, and I think there's a beauty to that. And I think the Western world and Western culture at the moment, I think, overlooks the beauty and the value of that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something interesting there, and you know, I'm always very intimately interested in patterns of human behavior, and you know, I think what I observed there is that humans are quite bad at kind of moderating things. Everything is either the best or the worst. And really what we need is sort of counterbalancing forces in a lot of cases, because anything that you do can be either good or bad, shifted a few degrees in one direction or the other. And really bad at recognizing, you know, the institutions that we have. And I think this is a point that people who are perhaps more conservative is where they have a very valid point, is that, you know, on the other extreme, people go, well, this institution isn't working, or this tradition isn't working, and it needs to be removed and smashed, without actually thinking, why was it set up in the first place, and under what conditions would it be positive and good, and how do we retain those? So that's why I think you need both those viewpoints. So I think as we become increasingly more polarized, those conversations stop, and then actually what happens is we lose the ability to you know, course correct ourselves. And the purpose of having opposing views and being able to exchange ideas is to be able to course correct and not let things get too out of hand. And we're kind of creating the conditions to you know, to ensure that doesn't happen as much. And I think that's probably some of the unease that we feel.
Yeah. And I think it's because so many people in the West make decisions entirely based on emotion. It's like, how do I feel right now? What can be done immediately to make me feel good about myself? That's 100% what it is. And part of it is helicopter parenting. Part of it is a culture of instant gratification, you know, and part of it is a culture that uplifts people's, you know, the individual's feelings at the cost of everything else. You know, there's never a consideration.
Social media.
Yeah, 100%. There's never a question anymore about what's best for the greater good. I mean, even like I remember being at university, and you know, one of the classes that I did was like an ethics class, and the main question in anything ethical is, you know, is it best for the common good or for the greater good? And there's nobody that's going to be able to convince me that a lot of the bullshit that I'm seeing in the West or in Western society right now is good for the you know, for the greater good. Not at all, because the facts speak very strongly out against it. And again, what I appreciate about countries like Japan is that there seems to be more nuanced thinking as far as that's concerned. You know, and you know, some of Japan's, you know, culture right now stems from necessity, you know, after they had to rebuild themselves after the Second World War. But again, you can't help but admire what they did as a country after 1945. You know, they were completely destroyed, and look at how they rebuilt themselves.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of all things geopolitical, I do need to thank you. Watching one of your recent podcasts for the recommendation of Disunited Nations, which
Oh
I ended
yeah,
up
yeah.
buying and read through, and was quite a compelling read. So appreciate that. Quite a
No,
place in my bookshelf.
it's a pleasure, mate. And the other person I would strongly recommend you read if you haven't read any of his books yet is Thomas Sowell. Literally anything he writes is brilliant. I mean, he's recently done one on charter schools. You probably need to kind of understand or have any interest in the American school systems to be interested in it. I do think that it plays a part in culture because everything, especially in the UK, the saying is, Americans sneeze and the UK catches a cold. Everything flows downstream from the US. So, but generally speaking, a lot of his stuff, especially on economics, is fucking brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and it's all fact based. There's no emotion involved. It's just a bare analysis of the facts. The guy has changed a lot of minds. He's 91 years old now. So I don't know how long he's going to be around for, but in my opinion, one of the greatest thinkers of our time. And the other person whose stuff you can definitely check out. So Peter Zion, who wrote Disunited Nations, used to work for a guy named George Friedman. George Friedman used to own a strategy consultancy called Stratfor, and then he sold them and he opened up one called Geopolitical Futures. His videos and stuff were really, really good. I'd actually say he's probably more insightful than Peter Zion.
Yeah, I think I read one of George's books prior,
Yeah.
so I was somewhat familiar. Once I saw, admit the Stratfor was mentioned, and then I was talking to another friend, and they'd mentioned George Freeman and mentioned the book title, and I was like, "Yep, I've read that one as well." So,
Yeah.
look, I think it's interesting to try and trace behavior, and I think politics to some extent is just a disguise that these patterns of behavior wear. Like there's always humans always try and build structures of power, always repeat the same sorts of behaviors, left unchecked. The end result's always the same, and I don't know that the severity can differ, but the patterns of behavior are exactly the same. I think particularly in what we do, a lot of the lyrical content is really kind of looking into what it means to be human and what are the worst parts of ourselves, and just diving in and going, look, we need take a look in the mirror, and we're not so far removed from animals as what we may think.
Yeah. One thing that you guys do, and I kind of want to close off with this, but I love it because I check out a lot of bands that you guys share. But the Graveir Spotify playlist, which gets updated weekly. Now, I will say I notice a couple of bands that are on this podcast on there as well, which where one of the best things that I could ever have is somebody that says like a band that tells me that somebody bought something off Bandcamp and they said that they listened to they heard it on Into the Necrosphere. So, but what gave you what gave you guys the idea to do that, and B, what's some of the stuff that you're listening to at the moment and that you think is really interesting?
We basically couldn't tour with this album because of the corona, and you need to somewhat have a presence online before people forget about you with their goldfish memories. And Nathan came up with a great idea of, we listen to a lot of shit. We both prod each other daily on, this is what I'm listening to, this is what's good, this is what's great. And just took the reins and decided to, it promotes our music as well as stuff that we really enjoy as well.
Yeah, and there's definitely a bit of I think there's a lot of what's been beneficial about it is it forces you to go try and find new things and listen to new music. So you constantly sort of trying to get things outside of your comfort, your comfort zone, and just listen to the same 3 or 4 albums. That there is so much good stuff out there, and if people chime in and find some things they like and go buy it on Bandcamp, then I think that's ultimately a good thing. Look, there have been some bands that I've seen you interview that have kind of twigged me to try and add them to the playlist. So guilty as charged there, but lots of other sources always out scouting things out, and we've got a little bit of a Australian music community sort of close thread that we kind of a few guys who are, either scene lifers, people that run labels, people that are in bands, or do write zines and things like that, and we all kind of exchange what we're listening to and share ideas, and that's been pretty productive as well, and just a good sort of way to tap into conversations around what's happening. And the good thing about it, I think, is that everyone is coming from a knowledgeable perspective, so any conversations that happen there are you're not listening to someone's unfiltered bullshit opinion. You're listening to someone who knows what they're talking about, and it's worth listening to.
And the thing is, the flip side to it is, you almost in the scene right now, you need a degree of curation from people that know. Even if you do know the scene well and you listen to the music, there's so much coming out. It's actually really easy to miss stuff. Like I had just recorded my top 20 of 2020 when I discovered the new release by Quinn Reichsal, and I was like, how the fuck did I not know about this? And why is it not on the list? Like, just absolutely blew me away. And it's been the same year in and year out. There's always stuff that I'll discover. Oh, this came out in 2018, or this came out in 2019. How did I not know about it? It's absolute genius. But
that's the beauty of experimental, though, right? Is that it's just always, it's that arrogant of, here's my album, I don't care. Every Maguire, PR write-up is basically like, this is the album, and that's it.
Well, I think that when they released the last one, they literally just posted something on Facebook. We put out a new album.
How
YouTube
good.
link. That's it.
But as far as current bands that are just next level, like the Ruins of Beverost have been a constant inspiration for us. There's nothing that guy does that's not good. Every album he puts out is just 100%. I
would say yes with the Tulgrim Wars. I'm still struggling with. There's a couple of really great songs on that album, and there's a couple that just.
I feel like it's full circle though. He's going back to the Dunkelin days, man.
No. I know what you're saying.
His roots, man.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
It's important.
There's just stuff that I think that the darkness that I love so much about Exuvia, there's not enough of that. And this is 100% down to me and my own expectations, but it was how blown away I was when I first heard Exuvia. The Tool Grimoire is not even close. And I thought I was heading there.
There's a band from Canada that I've found recently that I just can't stop frothing over, called Rubber Witch, but with 3 V's.
No.
It's I'll send you a link, man. It's probably one of the most abrasive, intense things I've ever heard in my life, but it's fucking awesome. It's it's got weird French black metal parts in it. There's bits that pay homage to Profanatica and things like that, but it's got this weird lo-fi industrial overtone of I don't know. And I think it's a female solo project. It's ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. All the profile pictures of the albums of this chick in a full PVC bodysuit. So it's high quality.
I'll definitely check that out. My favorite Canadian band. Yeah. My favorite Canadian band right now, and I don't think this is any secret, Panzerfaust. I think the last 2 records that they brought out.
Unreal, man.
Oh my God.
Band. Do you like that Aversio Humanitatis?
Yes.
How good is that band?
Phenomenal. And you know what the craziest thing about it is? I had Simon on, I think, for episode 39, and he was so almost humble to the point of self-deprecating, and he's like, we put out the record. We don't really make music as particularly original, but if people like it, it's okay. It's like, dude, you've put out one of the fucking best black metal records of the year, and you seem to act like, listen, don't waste your time with this if you absolutely can't be bothered. It's like, I was very, very surprised by his attitude towards the whole thing, but I fucking love it. And another band, my favorite record, or one of my favorite records, definitely of last year, Utkana, out of Greece, just fucking insanely good. They almost have that kind of a Versa Humanitatis vibe, but then they've got a bit of the Greek Rotting Christ influence in it as well.
Yeah, I think we're a bit spoiled 2020. I think everyone being sort of locked inside. It was so many good releases that came out. It was really hard to, narrow down to a top 10. There were so many just high quality albums that could easily have been in there. It was, I probably struggled more than I did in previous years to get to kind of pick what my top 10 would have been.
Oh, same.
Have you
same,
heard that Prison of Mirrors album?
No.
Oh man, do yourself a favor. You're gonna copy your own playlist, mate.
We'll make a Into the Necrosphere one just for you.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to check it out. You give me two strong recommendations now.
Oh, so I've got more than two. Just putting that out there. There's a dude that lives locally to us that's just blown up out of nowhere called Komodos. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Dude's just on fire, man. Like, has like 6 different labels putting out his stuff across the world. You know, he lives like an hour from us at like a beach city, and it's just like the most fucking intense, like crusty old black metal you could ever want. It's it's the perfect storm, right? It's like Zouster being from California, like beach, sunny breeze, most depressed fucking dude in the world, but it's the best music ever.
Yeah. Oh, it's like the dude from Kris, who you've got Nightbringer and you've got
Fuck, how good is that new album?
Oh my god, dude!
Something new.
I think I remember when I heard that the first time. It was like it was some of them. It's very clearly black metal, but there's like an intensity in that's on a fucking different level. Like it is. I don't know how to describe it. Like it just the way that he builds up a song to a blast. Like he uses blasts as a dynamic. Like a fucking trumpet, the trumpet dynamic. Call of the apocalypse.
Yeah, but like the thing, like I really like Nightbringer. I like the approach of Nightbringer and the artistic direction of Nightbringer. But from my personal opinion, they've always suffered in production. Like it's always like I'm a drummer, super clicky drums that I just can't get into. My brain just switches off. Music's all there, the presence is all there, but the drums just switch me off. But the thing about that new Achilles album, man, it's full circle and it's just this sonic beam straight into your head. It's unreal. Absolutely unreal.
And then the other big release from last year that I still keep listening to on repeat is Ulcerate. That stare into death and be still. I've liked all their stuff, but I didn't expect them to put out a record like that. I mean, that was fucking phenomenal.
We got super lucky and we got to play with those guys. And I've been lucky enough to play with Ulcerate a couple of times with various bands that I've been in over the years. And Jamie's probably one of the most down to earth dudes you will ever meet in your life. And like, basically when we toured with him was like that Shrines of Paralysis sort of era. He was like, yeah, man, we're going to walk away from this dissonant stuff. We've fallen into that weird pocket that I'm not really into. We just want to write something that's just super upfront and super intense. Fuck me, man. That album is unreal. Like you can tell like they've just got all of their skills and just sharpened them to the most blunt form and just gone bang.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like all of the best stuff that they do is just kind of distilled, concentrated, and just fired out at you, and it's just beautiful. It's a phenomenal record.
That final riff and stare into death and be still.
Yeah,
but like it's NATO and I have a thing where we call it the forever riff. It's like if we write something, we want it to be the forever riff, a riff that you could repeat, 76 times and not get sick of it.
Yeah.
The end of that riff, like, play that for 45 minutes. I don't care. It's fucking unreal.
Yeah. My favorite track on that record is Visceral Ends, because I think that opening, the sort of softer guitars and the mood that it sets at that opening is just incredible. And then when the song properly kicks in, it hits you like a fucking slab of concrete in the face.
You like that band Spotsin?
Yeah. That was another surprise of last year.
That 2020 album, man, is a fucking piece of bile. It's just straight up savage.
Yeah.
It's old teeth. It's old teeth all the time.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And it was one of those bands again that I kind of I'd know I was familiar with some of their older records, and then they were like I just for some whatever reason I just wrote them off. I didn't really pay too much attention to them, and then I remember Invisible Orange's profiled Requiem, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a listen again, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is some fucking serious shit.
Yeah,
I think all the albums have been different from each other stylistically as well. I think it was Wrath Upon the Earth that kind of just sounded like if Obituary was doing like a black metal album. He's had that real rotten voice. But then the next one was totally different. But they all managed to be good. So yeah, I'm always impressed by that.
The other thing that really caught me last year was Faust's new band, like Emperor Faust. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not Norwegian, but Djevel.
Yeah.
That is probably one of the most interesting.
I think it's Jevel.
But dude, it's like one of the most interesting bands for me in the last 10 years, where it's like has that like original Nordic spit that we all fell in love with, but it's fresh and it's vibrant, and you can just tell it's Faust just pumping away. And every release that put out has been something special. The same with Hordem Rife as well. Another band, the same sort of Norwegian circle, man. All those dudes are in like 45 bands, and they've just put all their focus into one, and it's just sonic perfection, man. Every album
that's the thing, man.
Put out,
when it comes to black metal, the bar gets raised so high every single year. It's nuts. Doesn't matter what anybody says. There's not a single music genre or subgenre, I should say, where every year the standard is raised so much. And I mean, that's been the case since the early 90s, frankly.
And I love that the standard is just how much it sounds like a pit.
Yeah, exactly.
How far can you go into the void? That is the standard.
Yeah. So last question, plans for you guys. I know you undoubtedly would have had tours and stuff lined up, which, Corona fucked up with things kind of potentially, hopefully lifting and changing. What are the plans for you guys now?
Yeah, look, we had a fairly busy year planned before Corona, so there's a few shows are sad to miss out on. I think in terms of plans, we've been writing material for the next release, probably 20 odd songs that were sort of sitting around. So just been through the process of picking through those, and once we can sort of get back into a rehearsing schedule, start to hone those and get those ready, and hopefully another album on the way. It's probably 12 months away, but once shows are on, we'll try and organise something and play a bit of catch up. We really haven't been able to promo King of the Silent World live in any way, shape, or form, which has been interesting. And kind of got plans to print a rash guard at some point. I'm just waiting on the design, so look out for that.
I was about to say that's fucking cool.
Yeah, man. We're the first black metal band to put out rash guards.
This will actually be our second one.
Claim to fame, bro.
Yeah, we've done one before, so this will be the second one that I think we'll probably make more publicly available.
Get Josh Barnett to wear that when he does. What's Chell Sonnen's promotion called? He's got like a grapple promotion.
We hit him up for like, dude, we'll send you all the free merch you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess
that would be bucket list. That would definitely be on the bucket list. If
Josh
Barnett.
I tried getting in touch with him as well, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of thousands that try and do. Because I'd seen him on a couple of like really small podcasts, like smaller than Into the Necrosphere, and I was like, okay, well maybe he's up for having a chat, but no.
He's such a dude, man. Doing. It's like I love a lot of things. Most of those things are violence and whiskey. He's the type of dude I can get down with,
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. All right, guys, I need to hit the road. Thanks very much for your time. Absolute pleasure catching up with you, and we will do a part 2 at some point, hopefully this year, maybe.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having us on, Jackie. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure, and really looking forward to hearing what you guys do next. I loved the last album, and it's great seeing you guys go from strength to strength. So very much looking forward to hearing what the new stuff sounds like.
Cheers.
Appreciate your time, sir.
All right, mate. Take care of yourself.
You too. Thanks.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That is a song called Carnal Bacchanalia off of the record King of the Silent World, put out by Graveir last year in April, and I think it came out on a label called Impure Sounds. Once again, if you have not listened to it yet, then definitely make sure that you get a hold of it. Really, really cool, and yet another notch in or another notch in favor of the Australian scene, which just, in my view, just grows from strength to strength. So awesome having those guys on. I'll definitely have them on again at some point in the future. I have also been having a conversation with Nathan about doing a Graveir giveaway, which I think is going to be a first ever for the show. So stay tuned for that. I'll make some announcements in the next couple of weeks. But if you're a listener to the show and you give enough of your soul, then you might be able to snag yourself some cool Graveir merchandise. But yeah, such a good time having those guys on, and I cannot more strongly recommend you checking out King of the Silent World if you haven't done so already. Another record that you can add to the list of Into the Necrosphere recommended releases, Fuath out of Glasgow in Scotland, the one-man project by Andy Marshall, also of Seor, have just put out he has just put out his second record, cunningly entitled 2, the sequel to the even more cunningly titled 1. I think as I get started with this, full disclosure, I do actually enjoy Fuath more than I do Seor. Seor is very cool, but it lacks a little bit of edge and a little bit of the kind of grit and nastiness that Fuath absolutely has in abundance. There's definitely crossover here. Andy has a specific way of crafting melody and crafting songs. And when I on the topic of melody, what he is especially good at, and it comes out in Seor and it comes out in Fuath as well, is writing something that is incredibly catchy and that sticks with you well after you've listened to the record. There's no shortage of that on 2. Tracks like the opening Prophecies, is a song that kind of split. It goes from fast to slow to atmospheric, but has that grain of melody running through it, from start to finish, and is infinitely more memorable because of it. But in many ways, Fuath actually reminds me of Forest that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, which is the young buck from Blut aus Noord's side project, in that it very openly worships the old Nordic masters, but whilst still retaining its creator's signature style, and that really is kind of the whole story here. There are 5 tracks on here. For the most part, they're relatively lengthy. At least 3 songs are 9 minutes plus, but it never gets boring. It always stays interesting and engaging. It's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. And as much as on the surface, I think it sounds quite simple because of the fact that Andy likes to mine a vein of melody or a riff for a minute plus on some songs. The songs are actually probably a lot more complex than they let on. And as I've listened to the album more frequently, it's definitely one of those records that kind of reveals more to you as it goes on. It's out now on Season of Mist Underground Activists, which as a sub-brand of a great label has put out some superb stuff. I would very strongly recommend that you check it out. This is a track off of 2. It's called The Pyre. That was The Pyre by Fuath off of a record called 2, which is available on Season of Mist, Underground Activists. Great stuff. Great stuff, and another home run by that label. Speaking of great labels, Debo Morty have signed up Anarkhon out of Brazil. And I think for a couple of folks, this might have come as a bit of a surprise because they tend to go for bands that, even if they are death metal, they at the very least tend to have a blackened influence on them. And if you were familiar with Anarchon's 2013 release, Welcome to the Gore Show, then you probably kind of wondered to yourself what they actually saw in these guys. If you listen to this new record, Phantasmagorical Personification of the Death Temple, it will become very clear very quickly that the standards and the quality assurance at Debo Morty have definitely not dropped. And these guys fit really, really well onto that label. The album originally came out in September of last year. It was put out independently. They picked it up, and it's now being re-released on vinyl. Whether or not this was down to a couple of lineup changes in the band, which I know they've changed out a guitarist and a bassist, or whether the guys just evolved significantly as songwriters over the course of the last 8 years. But you can basically forget everything that you know about Anarchon. This is a totally, totally different kettle of fish. And the songs that are on Phantasmagorical Personification of the Death Temple are atmospheric, brutal, really, really dark, and have this really sort of dismal, cavernous feel to them. Debo Morty describe it as old school death metal, but I would say a better description would be if you took the idea of old school death metal and left it rotting in a sewer for about 25 years. Whatever putrid, festering fucking heap comes out of that is effectively a great analogy for Anarchon's new music. I love the 7 tracks on here. I think they're all infinitely memorable. They work particularly well because of how well most of the elements work together. Aaron Romero's vocals in particular are deep and fucking nasty and otherworldly. The riffing on the album from start to finish is top notch. My only one gripe, and it's kind of the same gripe that I have had listening to Welcome to the Gore in retrospect, is the drumming. I sometimes feel is a little bit pedestrian, and it's not as though Wellington Backer, the drummer, can't play. I think what tends to happen, and again, whether this is an issue with the mix, whether this is an issue, or whether this was something deliberate, or whether this is just kind of his style. They can sometimes move towards sounding a little bit monotonous, and they almost have kind of a punky feel to them, where you kind of have this very, very basic beat, or a very basic blast with very little variation in between. And I don't know whether I'm articulating that well enough, but to give you guys an idea, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to death metal drumming, or when it comes to extreme music drumming, generally speaking, the work on the last Ulcerate album to me, has really kind of set the standard as far as feel, variety, aggression, and this is very often, unfortunately, the exact opposite to that. I get the need to sometimes keep it simple, but when the rest of the band is pulling so far ahead in terms of technicality, songcraft, everything else, it does kind of sometimes stand out as a bit of a sore spot. But again, frankly, I think once you get to kind of track 2, and you really start to develop an appreciation for what these guys have done from a songwriting perspective, it's probably going to bother you a little less. I just thought I would mention it because I have started to develop a bit of an issue with I guess what I would call pedestrian drumming in recent years, and unfortunately, I think, like I said, Anarchon sometimes are a little guilty of that. But don't let that put you off. Phantasmagorical Personification of the Death Temple is an excellent record. I would definitely recommend that you check it out, especially if you like old school death metal in kind of an incantation mold that has a little smidgen of death metal added to the top for good measure. I'm going to play a track for y'all right now. This is a song called Far Beyond Blood and Death. Far Beyond Blood and Death by Anarkhon. It is off a record called Phantasmagorical Personification of the Death Temple. It's available digitally right now. And there is also, I believe it's a limited run vinyl release coming out by Deborah Memorti. So if you're a vinyl fiend, then definitely make sure that you check it out. And if you hear that racket in the background, that is the dog reminding me that it's time to take her for a walk. So I'm going to probably do that right now. And when I return, it'll be time for the news. Right, I'm back. We are on Invisible Oranges, and first on the list is a kindly reminder that Gothic by Paradise Lost is the dawn of, or heralded the dawn of, a Death Doom classic. Like I said, the album is 30 years old, and for me personally, this is one of the most influential records in my musical journey by no small stretch of the imagination. I was 14 years old when I first heard this, which makes it 1994, a couple of years after it had come out. I remember being out skating at the local university campus with my friend Lee Wollenschlager of Unblessed Divine fame. And somebody had a boombox with him, so he slipped a tape of this in. At the time, I was already into bands like Sepultura, Slayer, Pantera, so I was into relatively heavy stuff. But when the first riff to the first track on this album kicked in, and then you're kind of hit with Nick's vocals, and then you're hit with that incredible female vocal that punches its way through the song at around kind of the 2-3 minute mark. I was just gobsmacked. I had never heard anything that sounded even remotely like this, and I basically for the rest of the day did pretty much no skating, and all I did was just sit with a boombox and listen through the album end to end. I went on to probably listen to this album nonstop for about 3 months straight. Then got into Shades of God, Icon and everything else. But for me, Gothic was a record that combined, incredible heaviness and nastiness with an awe-inspiring amount of beauty. And it also showed that you don't need to do all sorts of crazy technical stuff to wring an extraordinary amount of emotion out of a song. Greg McIntosh, in my opinion, has the ability to do more with one note than most people have are able to do with 60 riffs, and it is proven on this record. This record was also the catalyst for me that got me into a ton of black and death metal stuff, because it sort of opened my eyes to how much or how many different elements could go into music and make it interesting and make it dark. And I think that Gothic is to me a record that has stood the test of time just because of how unique it sounds. I still don't think there's anything, even if you factor in bands like My Dying Bride and Anathema, who are kind of playing in the same field, there's nothing that has ever come out that has sounded like Gothic. There was nothing that's come out that sounded like Shades of God either, which is another record that I really love. But Gothic, as far as riffs, as far as its bravery at the time, especially, because for a lot of extreme music was all about speed, and actually a lot of my friends at the time were all about speed as well. So I didn't really have a lot of people around me until a little later in my life that were actually into music like this and into bands like Paradise Lost. But yeah, like I was saying, there was a real bravery where these guys weren't all about speed, and they weren't all about trying to sound as brutal as possible or as evil as possible. It was just about writing really, really great, solid songs, which they did in mass. I mean, there's so many good songs on this album. The title track is incredible. Eternal is fucking amazing. Rapture is incredible. The last track, which I believe is called The Painless, is just astonishing. If you have not spent a significant period of time with Gothic for the last couple of years, then I strongly urge you to go back and give it a listen, because I think you'll be surprised by how timeless it sounds. The production is worn a little over the years. It sounds like early 90s production. But I think it's phenomenal, And generally speaking, Paradise Lost, I think there's no doubt about how big of a fan I am of this band. If you listen to the podcast, you'll know. I kind of went with. I stayed a fan basically through all of the changes. They did 1 Second, which I thought was different but good. I really liked Host when it came out, as much as a lot of people were railing against it. I continue to love them to this day. But this was the album that got it started, and like I said, this is also the album that got me down the death and black metal track. In ways that I think was probably quite different to the route that the folks around me were taking, and for that I am unbelievably grateful. So to Paradise Lost and Gothic, happy 30th birthday. It is insane to think that album is 3 decades old, because I can still remember hearing it for the first time so vividly. But anyway, it is what it is, and it is a fucking phenomenal record, and there's not a lot of albums that you can refer to 30 years later and go, this has stood the test of time, and I'm pretty confident in 30 more years there's still going to be people discovering it in the same way that I did. Maybe not on a boombox, but who knows. Right. What else is on Invisible Oranges? They review Enforced's Kill Grid, which I reviewed last week, and I think is excellent. Nothing much else to talk about there, so let's move on to Metal Injection, considering the fact that Metal Storm doesn't really, does not seem to work anymore on anything that I use. I don't know what the fuck is going on there, but anyway. Iced Earth's John Schaefer says he used bad judgment, wants a do-over for the Capitol riot involvement. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, mate. He should never have been there. The whole Capitol riot, I still balk at the idea of calling it an insurrection like so many other people do, but the fact of the matter is it was the fucking dumbest thing that's happened in many years, and to be there was it was the worst judgment possible on his part. Now I know that he's being held in jail without any bond. I do think that's a little bit extreme. Considering the fact that this guy has been for all intents and purposes a productive member of society for his entire life, and you have a bunch of Antifa scumbags running around trying to either trying to or actively burning down buildings, destroying shit, attacking people, and they're being let off the hook, or at least released on bail without without any issue. So I think that there's a bit of a double standard there, but again, John Schaefer, you are a fucking baboon. All right, and so we move on. Apparently, Serge Tankian discusses how he developed his unique vocal technique. I've got I can tell you that without having read the article. 2 words: soy milk. I bet you in the interview he goes, so, I was thinking of ways to stop drinking full cream milk because it's cruel to cows, and I discovered this amazing thing called soy milk, and then all of a sudden I felt my testicles rise and my voice go higher and higher, and eventually I was able to sing like a woman. Moonspell's Fernando Ribeiro on Hermitage. Love-hate from Portuguese metalheads. Fernando Ribeiro, I don't even want to talk about that Hermitage album again, because I think it is absolute mucky muck, and there's no other way to describe it. It's fucking atrocious, and it's a disgrace to that band's legacy, which by all intents and purposes has thus far been excellent. Mastodon aiming to release their new album this fall. Looking forward to that. Again, I could do without being lectured on politics by these guys all the time, but politics be damned. They are fucking phenomenal musicians. I love Mastodon. I'm not even halfway shy in admitting it. I've loved them ever since Remission. Again, they're one of those bands like Paradise Lost, where every single record is different, but they seem to kind of keep challenging you on every album. And I hope that they do the same on this one. I thought that the last one, I think it was Empire of Sand, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was fucking fantastic. Pretty much everything prior to that has been phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to that. The Slay at Home festival that Metal Injection is doing is pretty interesting. I know they've got Beast on there, New Century Media signings. I heard that record and I wasn't particularly impressed, which is why I've not really spoken about it. But Into the Necrosphere alumni, Damnum, have been on there as well. I'll try and share on the socials when the video of that comes out. Damnum's last album was very good as well. And I might actually try and get Nathaniel back on the show again. He was my second ever guest. And there he is, Damnum, full performance, Slay at Home. second ever guest, very cool guy. I was nervous as fuck talking to him because it was one of those things where I kind of, Damon was one of the bands that I really liked at the time, and I obviously still do. So he was one of the folks that I thought would make a great guest. It turned out that he did. But he also knows an awful lot of people, who I also wanted to reach out to. So I kind of had this feeling like if I fucked up or if the interview was a disaster, there goes the idea of the podcast. But great guy, and we've exchanged messages a fair few times since. So it'll be awesome to have him back on the show. But go check out this full performance. Great band, like I said. Amorphous announced live at Helsinki Ice Hall. Amorphous was a band that back in the olden days I used to really enjoy, but those olden days are past. I think I still like Elegy, but outside of Elegy, there's nothing in their discography I have any interest in listening to, and I'm pretty sure if I listen to Elegy now, it would sound extraordinarily dated. Meshuggah is in the studio, which is great news. I fucking loved The Violent Sleep of Reason. I really, really liked Obzen. They've been on a bit of a roll, actually, over the last couple of years with all of their releases. Very excited to see what they do. I thought Kolos was very good as well. I think it's Kolos that has... Either Kolos or Violent Sleep of Reason that has a song on called... I think the enemy is surveillance. Jesus Christ, it is so fucking hard. It's unbelievable. Skillet frontman sanely compares Grammys to Hitler, criticizing Cardi B performance. So yeah, I think this was pretty funny. I mean, why will people not stop with these fucking Hitler comparisons? And it seems to be true of the left and the right. Literally everything that they don't like or don't agree with is Hitler. It's I think it's fucking insensitive to anybody that experienced any kind of loss during the Second World War. It's historically insane, it just seems like it's the preserve of fucking morons. But that being said, the Cardi B performance was also the preserve of morons. So I on one hand, I don't get why so many people on, particularly the conservative side, are so unbelievably upset about the performance when, frankly speaking, why were you fucking watching it to begin with? But then secondly, I do kind of see the point where people go, well, if they're coming after Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez, as they've been doing recently, then at the same time, you can't apply the rule of if you don't like it, don't watch it, but then selectively go, okay, but this is problematic, and so now we're canceling it. So I do see the point there, and frankly speaking, and this again, Cardi B can do whatever Cardi B wants to do, and her brain melted moron fans can like whatever they want to like, but if as a parent of a young girl, I would be fucking mortified if Meadow listened to this bullshit or liked Cardi B, or anything like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure my parents were pretty mortified at anything and everything that I listened to when I was a young blood. But I sure as shit wouldn't want her liking any of this crap. But again, she can do whatever she wants. I don't understand why people are getting so, upset about it. At the same time, to the folks that are taking umbrage with the fact that people are getting upset about it and then trying to cancel a whole bunch of other stuff, you can fuck right off too. We move on. What else is there to check out on here? Fear Factory begins teasing new album. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a load of bullshit. We'll see whether or not it helps Dino dig himself out of his financial quagmire that he's gotten himself into. We spoke a little bit about the whole fucking Meghan and Harry debacle on the interview with Graveir. I'm not going to touch on that again. Just to say once more, I don't care about either side. They're both a bunch of spoiled, entitled brats, and the world would be better off if we never, ever had to hear about any of them ever again. Butcher Babies, Carla Harvey guests on new Butterside song, Amber Alert. One thing that I'd say about Butcher Babies, I don't particularly care for their music, but I saw that Century Media dropped them. And I think they're releasing their new record independently, which I just find bizarre. I mean, they're not a great band, but they're not a... If I can compare them to some of the fucking crap that I've heard labels put out recently, I'm very, very surprised that they're struggling to get a deal. They've got two stunningly attractive front women. They got music that the average buffoon would, probably find pretty cool, whether for gym music or, to psych themselves up before they, go out protesting. But it's, I'm very surprised that they're not getting a deal. And again, I come back to what I've said before with, A&R sleeping on the job, at a lot of record labels. It is astounding to me that bands like Stellar Master Elite, Master's Call, Teuruki, and many of the bands that I have featured on the Demo of the Week segment are not signed. Thundering Hooves, a band who I reviewed their new album a couple of weeks ago, unsigned. I just can't get it. It's I would literally consider starting a label today to sign those bands, because I think it's just a fucking huge missed opportunity. Gatecreeper drummer launches new band, Bloodquest. Gatecreeper is all right. Actually, not all right. The last Gatecreeper album I thought was very cool. I don't know what Bloodquest is about. I think the name is fucking stupid. It sounds like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books that we used to play when we were kids. And if you're old enough to remember them, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it definitely sounds like. It definitely sounds like the name of one of those. Right, let's move on to Blabber Crap and see what they have on there. It annoys me that Metal Storm can't get their act together, by the way, because, that's where all the fucking, heavy shit is about, or is on. I don't really want to have to talk about about fucking Ted Nugent and Amy Lee, but here's some news. Obituary is very excited about songs for next studio album. Fans are really going to love it. If you listened to Into the Necrosphere, you would have heard about that several weeks earlier, because I know that Borovoy at the Democrats arm, the Democrat wing of rock music, is never going to post anything that features on here. But either way, I'm also excited for the new Obituary album. I must confess, I didn't like the previous one very much. I think they're a band that benefits from having a producer in the studio, because I get the sense that they sometimes may have the tendency to kind of stick with what they know and think that sounds cool, when I think you need a degree of quality control that a producer can bring. So I hope that the new record is going to kind of, maybe go back to Executioner's Return, or something like, a record like that, which is, a little bit different, but, has all the Obituary elements intact, rather than, the last record, which, like I said, was a bit of a disappointment to me. What else? Insomnium drops new single, The Conjurer. Way back, I think this was the second ever Insomnium record. I absolutely loved. I think I gave it a 10 out of 10 review on Chronicles of Chaos, and I think it's one of my favorite records of that year. I've not really paid a huge amount of attention to them since, again, for the reason being I've kind of fallen out of love with that style of death metal, but I'll give this a listen again and see if I can be convinced. I somehow doubt it. On the topic of new releases coming out, I'd be curious to know what you guys are looking forward to most this year. Right now for me, at the very, very top of the list is the new Antichrist Imperium. The New Voices, is probably a very close second. Beyond that, I'm trying to think. I know there's bands that are rumored to be bringing out stuff, but I don't know, for sure, what's coming out. I know Panzerfaust will definitely put out something this year, which, I'll definitely check out. If the timelines are, or if history is anything to go by, it should be time for a new Marduk record. You would hope maybe the Mayhem guys have been working on something, although I doubt that very much. But if they have, it would be very cool. I know there was a bunch of stuff from the Demon Sessions that they could potentially put out as a record. Marduk, you would hope that if they put out a new album, it's a step up from Victoria, because Victoria was a load of fucking poo. Again, Marduk need to kind of go back to the Wormwood, Serpent Sermon vibe, which is where they were at their absolute best. I get the impression, which is where Mortis was at his most active as a contributing songwriter. Metallica's Nothing Else Matters gets hurdy-gurdy. Stupid fucking headline and a stupid idea. Max Cavalera's Go Ahead and Die releases first single Truckload Full of Bodies. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by this. So Truckload of Full of Bodies is the track, the album Go Ahead and... the band Go Ahead and Died. Go Ahead and Die, not Go Ahead and Died. What the fuck is wrong with me? Max Cavalera, obviously of Soulfly, Cavalera, Conspiracy, and Sepultura fame, and he's doing it with his sons, Igor Amadeus Cavalera and Zach Coleman. Actually, Zach Coleman I don't think is his son. Zach Coleman is from Black Curse and Chemists. But Igor Amadeus Cavalera, his son, is with him in the band, and I gave it a listen, and was very pleasantly surprised. It's kind of got a punky, old-school death metal vibe to it, with Max coming in doing, typical Max vocals. Not bad at all. Let's do one more, and then I am going to wrap this up. Let's see. Who can I... there we go. Corey Taylor speaks out against cancel culture. Nobody's perfect. Stop acting like we all should be. Pot calling the kettle black, because this guy has been, I personally feel, on the side of the cancel left for a very, very long period of time. I feel like as he sees people like Marilyn Manson being cancelled, and this is not to say that, he has any skeletons in his closet, but let's be honest, most people who've been in a successful band for the last 20 years do. I feel like maybe he feels the walls are closing in. Again, personally, I think the whole cancel culture thing is a fucking absolute shambles and a disgrace. I find that anybody in the music, and the heavy music scene in particular, who, defends it, or, who rages on against people's ability to express their opinion freely is an absolute idiot, and they have strayed miles away from the values upon which the scene was built. But like I said, Corey is he's always been a dubious individual for me as far as that whole thing is concerned, because he's on the side of the woke without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm very surprised that he's speaking out against cancel culture, and I can only deduce that we are a couple of weeks or maybe a month or two away from a story coming out of how he spoke in a ungentlemanly, or acted in an ungentlemanly way towards a lady on the road. Because like I said before, let's be very honest. If you were in a successful band over the last 20 years, there is not a chance that there's not somebody who is going to be able to, make a accusation of some sort to you, and in the current climate, it is most likely going to stick, because the current climate has no room for nuance; it has only room for judgment. Anyways, on that note, I think that is about it for the news for this week. That's it for this week, everybody. Thank you very much to my guests. Thank you very much to all of you for tuning in. Next week, I am due to have on Mikhail of Fredensdal. I know that he was supposed to be on this week, but we had to move the recording of the episode. I also have a couple of other folks in the pipeline, so we'll end up seeing how it works. Fredensdal, like I said, it's about 70% confirmed. But thanks for the support. Thanks for the love. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, I hope that you are all safe, well, and healthy. From the mean streets of Great Shefford, I am wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.